Hey, but how you doing?
Good. Hi, Jason.
So let's jump into this. Why don't you let people know how did this all start for you? How did you get OP?
How did I get my OP? I think that's a very hard question because I don't really know. I think it was a very long process. It's going to be a long interview if I get into the details. But
That's why don't you give them
I,
like cliff notes?
so I was a rather sedentary person, and then I started working, and then I figured out I cannot just be sitting at the computer 10 hours a day and do nothing. So I started working out, and then I figured out running's interesting and easy to do. And then I got into marathon running. So I actually, it went really fast. And with my second marathon, I qualified for Boston, which was great. But then I started feeling like all this running is hurting my body. So I started having hip issues and knee issues, but I kept running and then I had to take time off. And then I ran Boston and I realized it could be time to have a kid. And when I was pregnant, I still wanted to stay healthy and sporty. And I still ran and I was stretching a lot. And one day I was doing a stretch, they call it a butterfly stretch,
Yeah.
where you know that, yeah. And I didn't realize when you're pregnant, all your joints are very loose. So I overstretched it and I felt the pop in my pubic bone. This is when I started having this pain that I later knew so well, the pain in the pubic bone, and I couldn't run anymore. Even when I was walking, it hurt. But I think there were already changes in my pelvis that this stretch just made my pelvis even.
Pushed you over the edge. Yeah.
So I couldn't run anymore uh, until I had Theo. And after that, I started running. I had a C-section. That's another thing. And you explained to me how that impacted my body. But I was able to get back into running really quickly. And I actually ran a really good half marathon when he was 7 months old, I think. And I very clearly remember that I ran it very well, but I did not feel well. Like I felt like I had absolutely no core strength. Like my limbs were moving, but it was like with willpower, you know. So I was aware of that I have to do something with that. And so I ran 2 marathons between my kids. Then I was pregnant with my second, and the pain, the pubic bone pain that I just forgot about it. Like, I had it when I was pregnant, then it was gone. So I was like, this was pregnancy, and now I'm good again. And then I got pregnant, and as soon as the hormones kicked in, I couldn't really walk longer without pain anymore. So I gave up running. I took it easy, and I was certain once I start running, like once he's born, I can start running again. And I tried that, but my body just didn't feel like it was ready. But I kept pushing because that's what I had always been doing. And then one day I had this horrible pain in my adductor. And at the end of the day, I was limping and I couldn't run anymore. And I thought, okay, gonna wait it out. It's gonna improve, but it didn't. And I was every day at the end of the day, because you have 2 little kids, you carry things, you clean up after them, you're busy all the time. And every day at the end of the day, I couldn't put any more weight on my right leg. And it wasn't as much pain in the pubic bone as it was in my hip. So around my sit bone and this adductor down to my knee, really sharp pain. And then so I did an MRI, and then I found out I had something that's called Osteitis Pubis. Yeah. I never heard about it before. And so I Googled it, of course, and I went to the doctor, and I could tell he had no idea what it was. And I showed him the printout, and he just read it, and he told me what said on there. So he said 3 months rest. Okay, that doesn't sound good. I really wanted to get back into marathons, but now I cannot run. And so I was kind of forced into this rest because I couldn't do anything. I had pain and it was getting better. I think after like 4 or 5 months, I started doing yoga again. I started biking again. And I started taking classes like, so I could go to classes in the morning with older people. So these were like core classes. And I felt actually much better. And then I thought maybe I can start running again. And I tried running, but the pain started coming back. And then after a while, I think it was, a year and a half almost, I did another MRI and it showed the same as, so it was like very advanced inflammation, the changes to the bones. Like when I read it, I was like, oh my God, this is awful. And in this 1 year and a half, it hasn't gotten any better. So then I found a new doctor, my gynecologist. She recommended, and this funny thing, she told me these are two good doctors, orthotic.
Yeah.
And then she said they're all bad, but these two are okay. I was like, what?
She's not wrong. She's not wrong.
I know she's not wrong. Yeah. And so I went to this guy. Oh no, what I did, and I actually, even before that, I found an what do you call it? It's like a physiotherapist, but with osteopathist.
Oh, osteopath. Yeah.
Osteopath. She's in Munich, and she actually treats all the soccer players here because they often get OP, and she had OP herself. So what she knew is that it comes from tight adductors. So she was basically, I paid 140 euros for half an hour, and she kind of like stretched my adductors. So I went a few times, and she said, now you're fixed. She made it clear I'm never going to be able to run as I used to, but I should be fine. So I always felt fine right after, but as soon as I started doing anything, I wasn't fine. So I went to this other doctor, and he said, we have to do some rehab, but first thing I need to rest. And I need to rest most likely for half a year. And so I rested. I remember the pain was really bad, and I would have to take my kid to daycare. So I would drive as close as I can so that I don't have to walk much. I couldn't walk more than, I don't know, 30 steps. I really couldn't. And then I would come back home and lie down, and I iced, and I was trying to figure out what can I do. And I was on the internet a lot, and what I was reading was not good. And then there was some group, and somebody mentioned in a Facebook group, separated pelvis or something like that. I was like, okay, I'll look into that. And I looked, and I was like, these are all these women that have children and their pelvis doesn't feel well, but it's not really me, because I feel more like my condition came from sports. And pregnancies were just what made it worse, but it was not the pregnancy that caused it. And then I thought maybe there's the Osteitis Pubis group. And then I Googled that and I found it, and it was like, yeah, there's this group. And they admitted me. I was like, oh, these are my people. They know what I feel. And then I started finding success stories. There were these, I'm sure you still know, there was Anya, I think. She was an ultra runner. She had, So there were two of them, and they were like, one of them wrote, I'm working with Jason at the OP clinic and it's working. And then another one's, yeah, it's working. And then somebody else, yeah, it's working. I was like, okay, let me look it up. And then I heard you say these things that really, it was like, this is what I'm looking for. And I didn't believe you could cure me, but I thought, even if I'm never going to be able to run, at least that sounds like it's going to make me a healthy, like somebody who can control their body, and I'm going to be fit. Because I felt, I have this, she died this year, a neighbor, she was in her 90s. And I felt like I'm 50 years younger, but I'm her, basically. I cannot walk. She had a walker. And it's like, I cannot move. I cannot go anywhere. I cannot take my kids to the playground. I'm 90 in the body of a 40-year-old.
Yeah.
And I felt like I cannot live like this anymore. I don't want to live, but you have kids, you cannot say you're gonna give up. So, but I didn't know what to do. And then I felt like, okay, I'm gonna give this Jason guy a try. And so oh yeah, I had to borrow money for that actually because I couldn't work. I wanted to go back to work, but I was not in, I couldn't work. I couldn't even go to work. And I was like, I told my dad, like I found this guy online and people say, it's like, online? What is it? Internet? Are you crazy? Don't you have doctors? Like, yeah, I have doctors and they tell me to do nothing. And I already was feeling so unfit. And I felt like like my lungs were getting, like I couldn't breathe well. I really didn't feel well. And so I called my brother and I told him, I was like, sure, yeah, do it. Great, okay. And then I contacted you and you explained to me that my 2 C-sections that I had impacted my ability to use my ab muscles. And I was overusing my pelvic floor. And I really like that. We did 2 sessions, and I knew that when I was like, we have these really heavy doors downstairs that I have to open to get to the bikes. And when I was opening the doors, I felt like I was popping out my belly and tensing my pelvic floor to do it. And then I realized it shouldn't work like that. I should actually use my abs to do that. And I also realized when I pick stuff from, I had to clean up after my kids all the time. When I do that, I tuck in my pelvis and I go on my heels and like I'm trying to protect my body. And after I pick up a few things, I'm in pain and I have to rest. And once we started working together, I was like, wow, picking up kids' toys is the best exercise ever. These are little squats that I do. So I would like go around the house, pick up stuff, clean up, and I felt better. And I still remember we had a doctor's appointment with the boys and I went there and I still had these like cushy shoes because the doctor told me as little impact as possible. So cushy shoes, and I was walking so slowly, not just little impact. So, and I still had these shoes and I was still walking like I'm walking on glass. And we went to the doctor and we came back. I was like, I don't feel any pain. It did, I mean, not like it would aggravate it normally. It would get worse because pain I had 24/7, but I didn't. And it was only after our 2 sessions and I was like, this thing's working. And so we went through the program really fast. I remember I did 7 sessions and we were done. It's not like I was pain-free. The weird thing about OP is that you start having times that you don't have pain, but when you get pain again, it's as strong as it was before. And you kind of forget how well you've been doing. And you're like, nothing's working. It's never going to go away. This is awful. How can I live like this? And sometimes it's the exercises that trigger it because you don't do everything. You cannot do it perfectly. Obviously, you haven't been moving correctly. Now you're trying to fix it, and it's going to be a process. So I actually, because I knew we would be doing this, I looked at the calendar, and so we started the program in March 2018. I started running April 2018. We were done May 2018. And in June, I had another 8th session because my pelvic floor still felt like this was the last issue. Like I felt I couldn't solve it. It felt really tight. So you gave me some exercises for that. And I also realized when I was breathing, I was supposed to breathe into my lower back and I was breathing more into my pelvis, which because my pelvis was so overworked, it didn't want any
extra work.
Exactly. It didn't want this air pushing in. So once I realized that, things got much better. But the running, that was like, I wanted to get back into marathon running. And so when I looked at the calendar, in 2018, I started running in April. In 2018, I ran a total of 50 miles. So I kept trying. And I think my first run was like 3 minutes long, and it triggered pain. Like I was in tears. It was so bad. And then every time I felt like I'm getting, you even said it looked good, but there was something like, it was my pelvic floor that was still very, like, always kicking in. I couldn't relax it. And then I felt like, okay, I can now live. I had less and less pain. These really, there was sometimes I was like, wow, it's been a week and I haven't had any pain, but I wasn't really running too. And then I was at the gym once doing my exercises, because I kept doing the exercises. I was getting better and better at them. And I felt also like when I do them, I feel stronger. So it was really helping. And I saw this guy, and he had a band, like a TheraBand around him, and he was running in place. It's like he's doing exactly what Jason's saying, like he's engaging his abs and he's doing this kind of like pony exercise. And I'm gonna try that. And also in the meantime, I was seeing people who started rehab later than I did, and they were already running. Like, oh, I just did a 5K, and I was like, why? I went through this program and it worked so well. Why am I not running pain-free yet? And you told me even you'd be running so fast and so soon. And so I started doing this exercise at home. And what was good, that I was able to completely block out everything, close my eyes, and just really focus on what's happening in my body, and apply, like change these channels, as you were saying. And then I realized that I always, my shoulders were kind of like tight. And as soon as I relaxed my shoulders, everything else relaxed. So it was just my core that was holding me up, and everything else was just moving.
Yeah.
And that my pelvic floor just relaxed completely. And so I did that. I checked. I did that. I started January 2019 with that. And then I was more and more encouraged. I would run outside once a week. And if otherwise, I did it every other day or almost every day, this exercise. I worked it up to 2 miles. And then I was like, okay, I remember it was winter and it was really slippery. So I was also worried because, you know, with OP, you really need the stability. You don't want to, yeah. But then I went running and it felt good. And this is when I realized I'm going to be running again. And really quickly, I worked up to 6 miles, 8 miles. And then I went to Boston. You couldn't buy ultra shoes in Europe back then, or they were crazy expensive. So I went to Boston for something else. I got myself ultras and I went running. And I run in Boston. I used to live in Boston. So I would run on the Charles River, and it's always like you go to the next bridge and next bridge. And somehow I got it wrong, and I ended up running 11 miles, like just like that, you know. I remember I wrote to you right after that. I was like, I ran 11 miles, and I did have some pain in the pubic bone, but this was the pain that I knew it's right after the run. And the next day, not only it was gone, but my body just felt much stronger. Like there was this thing that you were always saying, don't focus on not feeling the pain, focus on how strong you feel. I had suddenly this feeling of strength. And another thing, like if I got my pelvic felt tight, if I went for a run, it would relax. So at the beginning, it was the movement that was causing the pain. And then later it was the movement that was, even running was removing, fixing it. Yeah, and then, but it wasn't like I was pain-free all the time. I felt like I'm over OP, but every now and then it was mostly stress and a lot of sitting also. And if I had a lot going on, then I couldn't do the exercises. And then I always knew if I do one session and then continue with the exercises, like I even had this calendar that I would say, okay, now I had pain again, so I'm gonna do just 3 exercises a day. because I don't have any time for more. And that would work. Like within a week, I was pain-free again. And I would tell myself, I'm never gonna get to this point again, and I'm gonna be so good about doing the exercise. And then you don't have any pain, so you forget about it, and you're like, no, I don't have time to do the exercises. And then but this time would like stretch. Like first it would be a week pain-free without doing anything. Then it would be 2. Then I would realize, wow, it's been a month or 6 weeks and I haven't done anything and I'm fine. And another thing, what I don't think anyone else ever mentioned it, but after these 2 sessions, like as soon as we started deadlifts, when I was walking, I suddenly felt like my legs were very close together. Like it wasn't something I was doing. My body was doing it for me. My legs were close. I almost had this impression that my thighs were rubbing, like, what is this? Like,
that's your so like if you remember back, one of the first tests you did, you lift up your leg, your body goes to the side. Everyone with OP does that. Your hip is sitting properly in the socket. So when you activate your glutes, all your glute muscles, but even the little muscles underneath your glutes that stabilize your hip, they start to activate again. So they suck the hip into the socket. Now, like we're talking about millimeters difference, but that's like if you're used to them being out, those millimeters seem gigantic. That's what you would have felt. Would have been your hip sitting properly, seated. It's just, I would call it your hip was seated in your socket. So then that brings everything close together. So when you put one leg on the ground, you actually feel like there's pressure going through your whole leg when you do it because you're not falling over as you do it. So yeah, it gives you this feeling that everything's like in sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would not feel it anymore because I would get used to it.
Yeah.
That it is new. And then every time I worked out more, focused more, especially the deadlifts, I think, and maybe kettlebell swings, again, this feeling. And it felt so good, like something's changing. And the funny thing is, it's not me doing it. It's my body doing it. It's the exercising changing my body. Yeah. So this 2018, I did the 50 miles, and 2019, I did 715 miles. So once I started working, I started running, I started running. I could have trained for a full marathon that year if I had the time for it. I was still careful, and I ran a half marathon that year. I ran 2 half marathons that year. The first one, I was very nervous because I didn't work it up to the 13 miles and it was super hot. It was like a 36-degree Celsius. Yeah. I remember I was so stressed and I had my mood was just so full the day before.
Because you're melting. It's 36 degrees.
Yeah.
Sorry, for our American friends, that's over 100. It's over 100 Fahrenheit.
Is it? Really?
Close to, yeah. So it'd be right on the border of it.
36. I don't think it was quite 36 in the morning when we ran, but it was really, really hot. And it was 36 later that day. Yeah, so I decided not to really race it because it was my first race and first 13 miles in, what it was, 7 years, 6 years?
Yeah.
And so I felt very strong throughout. And I remember to keep myself busy, I was looking at people running in front of me and just judging, like analyzing this. You know what? Once you know what running good form looks like, you realize 90% of people run wrong. They run towards injuries.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. So the funny thing is, after the race, what hurt? My stomach muscles. My obliques hurt, which I thought was a good sign.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So I that was good. And then after that, I started running also faster sprints, tempo runs. I ran another half marathon, a hilly one this time. Then Corona came, so there were no races, but I kept running. So I'm still all those years, I'm like between 700 and 800 miles a year, which is less than half what I used to run. But this is because I have a family and I work, and this year I'm running a full marathon. It's been 10 years.
It'd be amazing. It would be amazing as well if you can get back to Boston. That'd be something else.
So my goal would be to qualify, but
Well, to
and
some,
I know I will one day, maybe when the kids are a little older.
well, also it's like those times keep going down as you get older, so you just get things.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
to summarize all of that for anyone watching here, so like it's really common, like when you have a C-section, and especially if you've had two, every time you do that, someone is sticking a knife. Like, it's a small incision, but they're sticking a knife inside your things. It affects your perception and how you experience your stomach, where your awareness of it. It affects how your muscles fire and how they function. And if you don't get really, really good, and good doesn't just mean any, like, here's a sheet of rehab. Like, if you don't get really good quality rehab after you have a C-section, you are not going to regain your core function. Now, that doesn't mean you won't walk around and be fine, but your body will compensate. It will use your pelvic floor. It will use some other region. And then 3 years down the track, 4 years down the track, then you pay the price for it. You try to run a little bit faster, you increase your mileage, or you pick up your sport more, or you start playing golf. But you don't realize that your body just picks up these little things along the way, sort of things. And even if you then just sort of like, if you take that and contrast that through Ava's experience of like, okay, so she showed me these videos, right? She goes through these sessions and she's moving beautifully. Her weight, she's holding onto weight nicely. She's transferring weight really well. She's jumping. She seems through there, but running is still not working, right? It's such a difficult thing in that it's like, okay, cool. You may functionally be able to make your body do all those things, but there's a difference between you're doing it and your body's just doing it for you, kind of things. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, what you basically went through was this process of being like, okay, I have all this strength, but how do I make this strength work for me? How do I make this stability work for me? Because I can do it when I'm walking around my everyday life now. I can walk, I can move, I can grab my kids, I can do what I need to, but it's not working for me when I was running, right? And for some people, it's like really quick. They do their exercise, they go to run and it just transfers immediately. And then like for you, right, it was just this harder process, but all you did was you just stayed calm and methodical. And it's just like, all right, well, if I can run 3 miles, I'll run 3 miles. If I can run a mile, I'll run a mile, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like you just listened to your body, took what it took, and then you kind of responded to it. And I think the hardest thing when it comes to OP is that you don't know how your body's going to respond at any stage, right? So some people fly through the beginning of the program and get really stuck in the middle, and other people the other way around. They get really stuck at the beginning, but once they get through that, they fly through the rest of the program. All you can do, right, is deal with what's in front of you. So it's kind of like, okay, I can only run a mile today. Well, I'm going to try and work on that and try to improve that, right? Kind of things. And I think that's such an important message for anyone watching. It's just this idea that like you wake up every day and you have to battle your body to change it because it's become this way, sort of things. And that battle never ends. It's just that you get stronger, so it's easier to do it. So it's like, oh, cool, you need to fight that battle every 6 weeks now instead of every week. Okay, cool. You can like, just before running caused pain, but now running, you're good enough at it that actually works like exercise for rehab for your body. It activates your glutes, it activates your core. So now all of a sudden you don't have to do those exercises because running will sustain your health, right? But it's just kind of like, oh, your body is just constantly changing at all times. And so therefore you just have to adapt to it. If it needs more rehab, you have to do more rehab. If running's struggling, well, then you need to change that up a little bit, sort of things. And it's just kind of like, I think what's really hard is that the medical system gives you this impression of this black and white world where it's like, well, you have an injury, you rest. Oh, okay, well, you have this kind of problem, you get surgery. It's like these, like, 0 or 1 kind of like equations. Except the problem is the human body is so subtle and there's just so much variance in all of it. And it's like, oh no, you have to live through this experience, right? Like, I was even talking about, it's just like, okay, yeah, cool. Part of the reason for doing this testimonial is for anyone who hasn't got OP is to like, to get an idea of what's going on and what it's like to work with me. And then I was like, but the other part is people who are going through this and are struggling and just need some inspiration to hear someone else has done it well, right? It's kind of like, oh, it's going through this and then experiencing that pain and then the emotional side of it. And then, going on now there's a Facebook group. So Ava done it with me like 5 years ago. It's so different now. I do it so differently. But like there's a Facebook group now that's specific for people doing this that you can go on there and talk to other people who are on there, right? And then work through it. It's like, oh, this is a lived-in process. You have to you lived through your injury and it came on over this like long period of time. And now you have to live through your recovery, right? And it's this idea of like, I now have a video on YouTube where I'm basically like, OP is useless diagnosis, because from the perspective of just being like, what does it really tell you? It doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you how bad your feet are activating. It doesn't tell you that your glutes don't work. It doesn't tell you that your core isn't functioning. It just tells you have pain right there. sort of things. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not very useful kind of things. And it's like, oh, in the same way, it's like you won't have OP forever, but you'll be working on your body forever because you're going to keep asking it to do things. And sometimes it'll be fine and sometimes it won't be. And when it's not fine, the hope is that you'll have the tools to kind of deal with that sort of things as you're going through. Okay, so if you were going to give anyone who was, sorry, go on.
One more thing I wanted to say, because I remember when I contacted you, I was also telling you about what my MRI said, and you're like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not interested really. It doesn't mean anything. I was like, what? Okay, I think it means something because they diagnosed me. And then with this MRI, they told me I have a Tarlov cyst on my lower back, and I was worried that with all the deadlifts, it could get worse because I read you shouldn't do very lifting. So when I was already doing well, I did another MRI just to see if this cyst didn't grow. And so they told me it didn't grow, but they also told me, but your inflammation it's still bad. Like, because, it takes 2 years.
Yeah.
And I thought this message would really make me sad or worried. And I was like, whatever, I don't feel pain, or I know I'm on the way out. I feel pain every now and then because the inflammation is still there. It takes time to go away. It didn't worry me at all. Whereas like with my second MRI, when they told me nothing's changed, it's bad, I was like, oh my God, now I have to live with it.
It's so funny. I did a testimonial before I called you, but basically like talking about that idea that it's like, oh, it takes like so anyone watching this, takes around 2 years for everything in your pelvis to heal, for everything to calm down, right? But it's like, the reason I like treating OP, and like I'll treat other injuries if like, if someone refers me or something, but I don't focus on it. So if you have an Achilles problem, it's like, oh, you have to be so delicate with it because, you're going to irritate, it's going to get annoyed. But it's like, oh, no, you have OP because you're like doing stupid things with your pelvis you're not supposed to. So you just stop doing that. Well, if I just show you to deadlift correctly, you won't put pressure on your back. You won't put pressure on your pelvis. So those problems won't get irritated. So it's like, oh, well, cool. I don't have to wait for something to heal. I can just make you strong now, kind of things. And you can get on with your life now. Will you be perfect? No, partly because you won't move perfectly all the time, and partly because you're not completely healed. And it's just like, but that's okay. You can get on with your life. And then we were talking about it, just like, oh, if pain is your only measure, well, then all you have to go off is, oh, I had no pain today, it's a good day. Oh, I have pain today, it's a bad day. But unfortunately, you're a woman, you're controlled, and you're so affected by the hormonal state of your body. So your pain can flare up aggressively just because of the point of your period that you're in, right? So is that is that a bad day? Done things badly? It's like, no, you're still moving well, kind of things. At the end, you'll be better. Sorry, go on with what you were going to say.
Yeah, whenever I had this period of stress, it wasn't just at any time during my cycle that the pain would come back, the pelvic floor. It was always before my ovulation. It was always.
Yeah. Just super things. And it's just like, oh, that your hormonal change is now affecting your pain sensitivity. And then it's kind of like, but then it's like, and hey, would I recommend that you go and run really hard when that's happening? No, kind of things. But like, are you going to stop your entire life because you're in pain? And kind of like, well, no, you got stuff to do, right? And it's like, to me, it's just kind of like, no one's scared of the pain. Like, they're not really, like, people can deal with pain. Most people are really tough and resilient. They can deal with pain, they can deal with difficulty, and they can make tough decisions. Do you know what I mean? Like, they can be like, okay, I can't run anymore, I'll cycle, I'll do. Like, they can make tough decisions, they can sacrifice. What people cannot deal with, like, at least in my humble opinion, is uncertainty and not knowing. And it's just being like, and making a decision and not knowing that decision was correct or the information was correct, kind of things. And to me, like, my biggest thing is like going, hey, I don't know if you're going to be perfect at the end of this. I don't think, but you will know how to activate your glutes. You will know how to connect your feet to the ground. You will know how to feel safe when you lift something or an object, or you pick up your child, whatever you're doing through there. And you will know you're feeling safe because you can feel those things activating. And will you do them perfectly? No. But if you can feel those things activating, you must be doing it at least 95%, right? And do you know what I mean? If you were moving 100% bad before and you didn't completely destroy yourself, well, then how much damage are you doing if you do it 5% wrong? Because if those things are firing, that's the worst that could be happening. And if all likely, you're probably doing it 100% great and your body is great, sort of things. And that pain you're experiencing is just a leftover effect because you're sensitive and you haven't completely healed yet. It's just a leftover effect because your body's just not in 100% great state, because unfortunately you were born a woman and you have to deal with this every month, kind of things. Like I often I wanted, like, because they make these arguments about, should men and women, like, should should trans athletes be able to compete in women's sports and stuff? I was like, they should, but they should have to carry around whatever extra weight a uterus and ovaries. They should have to carry that in a backpack or something, like just to level the playing field. Because it's like, oh no. It's like, they have to. Every other woman has to carry that around, right? This extra weight. I think that should be how they should have to do that. They should carry that little extra weight because you guys got to like. So if I'm running a marathon, I don't have to carry around a uterus with me. Like that's got to be an advantage, right? Sorry, it's really stupid, but I always think that. But yeah, it's kind of just this like thing of just being like, oh, if we can just create this objective reality that you control, that doesn't control you, because pain controls you. You don't have any control when it happens or what it does, kind of things. You can control things around it, but you can't control it directly. But you can control yourself and your body and how you move. And if you feel confident about that and you're safe, then all of a sudden you don't feel uncertain anymore. There's no more doubt. And funny thing enough is that when you don't have doubt, you don't have fear, you don't have uncertainty, the pain either reduces a lot or it doesn't bother you when it is there, kind of things through that. And yeah, and like, if I can speak for you, it's like you got that third MRI, but you had a completely different narrative and way of interpreting that data, because it was like, oh, you don't make your decisions based on pain. You make your decisions based on how well you're functioning and how well you're moving. And none of that data from that scans says anything to your function and how you're surviving. And now, like, that was a long time ago. Now the studies are even greater. People don't rely on MRIs for health and things. Like back pathologies are not determined by MRIs, sort of things. And yeah, now people are way further in that. And in 5 years' time, we'll be even further across. Like, we keep improving sort of things. But I was going to say, any last piece of advice or anything that you would tell anyone thinking about starting this program or who are in the middle of their journey, who are struggling, just any advice you want to give people?
Well, stick to it. It's not easy. It was really hard mentally for me. It wasn't physically as exhausting. It was mentally really, really tiring. And if you feel you cannot do it anymore or you don't believe it works, just step away, or maybe even make a note every day how you're feeling, so that when you're not doing well, go back and look and see the whole picture, because you are improving. And for me, I mean, I knew I would be going back to running, but it took forever. But I was doing well. So just believe that you'll be better. Because back then, if I had known what I know now, if I had known I'd be 100% fixed, it would have been so much easier. Like if you're doing it and you're like, is it really working? I guess it's working. But will I ever be pain-free? Will I ever run again? Yes, you will. There are so many people who've done it. It's not easy, and it takes months, but every month is better.
So, well, thank you so much, Ava. And yeah, hopefully anyone watching this, I hope you can take a lot. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.